Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. Today we've got a MacBook Pro. This is it's a 2015 because the trackpad doesn't click. If it was a 2013 or a 2014, then you'd get a mechanical click on the trackpad. This has the forced trackpad, so it does not have a mechanical click when the laptop is off. It needs a new keyboard. I'm not sure why I think there's some keys or letters that don't work on the keyboard or something like that. So we're going to take this thing apart and change the keyboard. So this is going to be a full strip job because we've got to gut the laptop out entirely to get to the keyboard on this one. So I'm going to start by taking some covers off. We're going to take the internals out, and then I've got a new keyboard and backlight here to go into it. So replacing the backlight is optional, but I always recommend it. A keyboard alone is like £15 or something like that, and with a backlight is like £20 or something like that. So like for a little bit extra, you can have a nice shiny new backlight that will be nice and bright and new and not horrible and glossy. It also means that if the backlight comes off in pieces, which sometimes it does, that's just no big deal at all. So let's take out these screws first and take a look inside. Well, I'm not the first person in here. I do hope this isn't one of my past jobs because it looks really sketchy. So it's had a battery replacement. The battery looks to be in fine condition, no problems there. The keyboard connector here is damaged, and I'm really hoping that's not part of our problem. Otherwise, we're going to have a bad day. The thermal paste looks like it's a hecking mess. The hell is going on with this? Like, I don't know if I'm going mad here, but am I seeing two different shades of thermal paste here? So that must have been repasted because that ain't an Apple job. And it almost looks like there's two different thermal pastes in there, which is a bit like, what? Why would you do that? Fine. All right. Let's keep going first. Let's strip it down. So yeah, I'm going to redo that thermal paste because I don't like the look of that thermal paste at all. I don't like the look of that one bit. Let's disconnect the camera and the antennas and the battery. Always take the battery out first. And the display connector. And what I will do, I'll start by taking the display assembly off. Technically, we don't have to take the display assembly off, but it makes the laptop a lot lighter. We just take a chunk of the laptop out of the way. It has to all be disconnected, and if you're disconnecting the display, you may as well take it off, because it's like a couple more bolts, and then we don't have to have the display getting in the way as it is at the moment. So let's get this guy out of here. I'm worried about the keyboard connector. I'm wondering if I should stop what I'm doing here and actually do some testing with the keyboard first and like poking that connector while the laptop is running to see if I can determine if that's a connection issue or the keyboard. Because if that's a connection issue with the connector, replacing the keyboard is not going to solve anything, and I will be putting myself through an awful lot of hassle and still have a not working keyboard. So yeah, we should do some checks here first. Reproduce the fault first. I tend to just get jobs like this. I tend to just blindly get on with. However, I'm spooked by that. I don't like it. So let's just jury rig this back in place. Oh, I think I remember this one. Yeah, no problem. I remember this one. This is, the keyboard is faulty. The issue with this one was that it was behaving as if the Option key was always depressed. So that tells me that this connector is not an issue, because if there was an issue with the keyboard connector, then we would have keys that do not work. Whereas if you've got keys that are always held down, that's not going to be a bad connection here. So I will carry on, no problem. Display off, put that to one side. So now we've got just the body of the laptop. There's a lot less to be dealing with, so we've just made our lives a lot easier. Okay, now we've got to take out the entire inside of the device. So I'm going to disconnect all the wires, take the screws out of the logic board, and then we're going to go fan, logic board, and the I/O board. Not necessarily in that order. What happened to you? I don't know. There's definitely 2 shades of thermal paste there. Either way, we'll clean that up and repaste it. Who the heck knows? Back of the keyboard doesn't look like it's in terribly good condition, but we're ripping it all out, so let's go. So I'm going to get my prying tool underneath the backlight layers. So we've got a couple of layers we've got to dig below, and I want to go all the way down to bare metal. Oh, do I need to take the key? I don't need to take the battery out for this, surely. It's been a while since I've done one of these, actually. In fact, have I ever done a 13-inch, or have I only ever done 15-inch keyboards? I can't remember. Thankfully, because this is an aftermarket battery that's been replaced before, it won't be stuck down terribly well. Yeah, oh, weak. I think the battery's got to come out. Okay, let's see if we can sneak this out. Okay, right. So the backlight is out. However, the battery clearly strays well onto the keyboard. So yeah, that is not up for debate. The battery has to come out. No, it's not too bad. Okay, I think this battery is going to come out without too much of a fight. So I'm going to just gently use my prying tool to dig under these cells one by one and pry the battery out one cell at a time. And we should be able to get this out, and if I'm careful and I don't pierce the cells, we can save this without having to replace the battery. Because damaging the battery would be an absolute disaster. I might just use some alcohol, which will destroy all of the double-sided tape behind here, but that's not really a concern to me. I'm not worried if the battery isn't stuck down super well, because it's not like it's going to fall out. It's dumb that it's stuck in at all, to be honest. Alright, we're winning. There we go, that's that one up. This is not as bad as the stock battery. The stock battery, you've got to drown it all in alcohol if you want a hope of getting that out without a fight. Right, now the middle cells, these are harder because you've got to reach underneath these cells. And these are held on by the bus bars that are connecting them up. And those are usually pretty well plastic wrapped, but I still live in fear of shorting them. So I'm just going to take it easy and just try to avoid putting any undue strain on them. I'm not sure what you can actually get away with. I've never tried. I need to take an old battery at some point and actually try just twisting these cells and that kind of thing, just to see what you can actually get away with and what is too much. Alright, that's one side. This guy's not fully free yet, but if I get the other one to the same point, we'll be ready just to rip the battery out. There we go. Okay, I think if I do a little bit of digging here now. I think we're coming out. Ooh. There we go. So having removed that battery now, you can see the pattern of the double-sided tape I was having to dig under. So that, now you've seen what that looks like. Knowing the shape of the glue you're attacking is incredibly handy because you know where to pry. In this case, as you can see, I was basically just trying to dig in the sides to get the flats of these prying tools under so I could just pull the cells up. If I'd pried right from the edges, then we might bend the cells or even puncture the cells, which is bad, obviously. But if you get your prying tools right under, so you're leaving the entire cell out, that is fairly safe. So this battery is fine. I can put this back in and it'll be a-okay. So now that's out, I've got to remove this plate, and that gets us access to the back of the trackpad. And that's got some little dinkies on it. Is that T3? That's a T3 or a T4. It's answering to my T3. There we go. Right, now we have access to the back of the trackpad. This is not the first keyboard this has had in. This is a replacement keyboard. Right, sorry folks. A customer came in and I paused the recording. And then I forgot to unpause it again. So I've removed the old keyboard now. So took everything off. Keyboard was in there. And it's kind of annoying because I did a whole spiel where I said, hey, look at this, because the keyboard was screwed in, not riveted in. And that was the final indicator that this keyboard has been changed before. And I was a bit suspicious because the font on this keyboard looked slightly out. I was like, this doesn't look like an original keyboard to me. Like anyone who knows their Macs knows that this doesn't look correct. You know, it's not like the keyboard that I've purchased. Whether or not this is a genuine one or not, I don't know either. However, I'm sure you'll agree if I put these two together, the keyboard I've got going in is drastically closer to an original one. You can see how much finer the font is. Look at that. The font is night and day different there. This one is big, fat, almost bold, whereas this is nice and thin and slender like the original ones are. So yeah, don't know what's going on with that. But yeah, so this is not the original keyboard. It's been changed before. That explains why the whole laptop is been apart before as well. For a moment, I was like, was this one of my early ones? Because it also had a couple of telltale things that it might have been my handiwork. Because I tend to reuse old screws from old MacBooks and stuff, and I tend to space them out, which is what was the case here. But I think I realized that it wasn't mine because after I took it out, the original holes look like they've been drilled. It looks like they have drilled out the old rivets, and I don't drill out the old rivets because there's a trick you can do with some flush cutters to remove them, which I've demonstrated in other videos. So that was the last indicator that says to me, no, this isn't one of my early keyboard replacements. So I've taken it out. I've taken these screws out. These screws are kind of knackered. They're all a little bit rusty. So I don't think the laptop has seen liquid damage, but I think the laptop that these screws came out of has seen liquid damage. So I've got replacements for these screws. I was going to give a whole speech about that in a minute, so we'll get to that. For now, though, let's just stick the new keyboard in place. So let's put that in. Oh, that is a little bit bent in the corner. Are you okay? Yeah, that'll be all right. That'll screw into place. Replacement screws. So here's some nice shiny new ones. Now you can buy these for like a couple of quid on eBay, or sometimes when you're buying replacement Apple keyboards, they come with a pack of screws. A MacBook Air that I've got in my queue, the keyboard I bought for that comes with a replacement pack of screws, which is only semi-necessary on a MacBook Air. We'll get to that one when that video comes along. But it's handy that it comes with them. For how little they cost, I would get extra screws because then you have nice shiny new ones. When you reuse old screws like this, they're probably going to give you trouble going in and out. And like half of these, I had to shred the heads of them to bring them out. And 2 of them, I actually had to just graunch the heads off and just snap them. So yeah, not pleasant. Get new screws just so the next person who has to look at the laptop doesn't have to do what I went through. Right, let's stick a screw in each corner just to locate things in place, and we'll check that everything is good. Right, all good there. All right, let's put the screws in for this. So if you've just pulled out all of the rivets to remove a riveted keyboard, the trick to removing the rivets is to get yourselves some flush cutters, just these kind of things. Use your ones that you don't like, and basically you grip the rivet like that, and then you lever on the join of the flush cutters, and it will pull the rivet out. It doesn't work all the time, but if you're careful and you get the hang of it, you get like a sort of a 70 or 80% chance to successfully pull the rivet out. And do that enough and you will clear enough of them that you will end up with mostly holes. And because aluminium is soft, you can just screw these screws straight into the aluminium. You don't need to drill or pilot or thread or anything like that. And these guys will just screw straight in. However, make sure you've got the right screwdriver for the job, just so you don't shred heads. Right, shiny new backlight. Let's take the backing tape off of this. And then we'll try and make sure that we get it stuck down straight. What state was the old one in? It's passable. I mean, it looks a little bit grotty, but it's passable. You could reuse that. However, as I say, replacement backlights are not expensive, so just get a new one. So you'll know that you've got this located in the right place because it goes over various pegs sticking out the back of the keyboard. I'm going to have to take off that backing bit as well. The MacBook Air is one of the tougher ones to locate because the keyboard is very specifically... It needs to go up against some of these edges, basically. So try and prioritize going down onto the pegs and then just push it down into place. There is a point to getting this lined up nicely because it does provide some limited liquid resistance by virtue of the fact that if you've got this plastic seal over the back of the keyboard, a spill onto the keyboard should have minimal ingress onto the logic board. And that does hold up. Like MacBooks do not have very good liquid damage resistance at all, but take what you can get, you know. The main issue with liquid resistance on MacBooks is just purely the fact that the back of the laptop is wide open. So as soon as any liquid goes off the back of the keyboard, it goes straight into there and straight onto the logic board. So yeah, that's the problem. Right, one backlight fitted. Right, now I can start putting the trackpad back together and the battery too, I think. Right, how did this go again? Right, battery back into place. So I'll line this up. And I'm going to prioritize placement of this section here because that's where the screw goes in. And everything else should kind of fall into alignment around that. And the actual battery itself, I want to sit as low as possible if my memory serves me. There we go. And I'm not going to press all of this down really hard just because, A, it means that I'll still be able to take it back out again if I have to. And B, it doesn't need to be in really hard. As I say, whenever I'm fitting batteries into MacBooks, I'm always severely tempted to just not glue them in or put in just the smallest amount of double-sided tape just so the laptop can be held upside down kind of thing. Just so they're less of a nightmare to take back out again should the need arise. Because, yeah, it is an obnoxious amount of glue they use. It's terrible. Okay, I've put a load of stuff roughly aligned. The next thing I need to do is I need to clean up the cooling system, put some new thermal paste on that and reapply it. And then I also need to go through the screws and check what screws I've got and where they go, because a load of the screws for this laptop were all in the wrong places. And so I need to go through them all and see if I can figure out where they're supposed to go again. Usually when I'm disassembling laptops, I'm putting my screws in specific piles, often near to objects. So like the 3 screws that go into the fan, I put the fan to one side and put the screws for it next to it and stuff like that. So I've always got that visual reminder. So I can figure out how to get all of this straightened out again, but I'll need a little bit of time just to go, yes, that one's supposed to go on the fan and so on. And I'm going to cut that because that takes me a while to do. So let's jump to the point where I've sorted out my screws. Right, I think I've sorted most of them out. There wasn't too much out of place, other than a couple of screws that were just not correctly ordered. However, also, I think there is just 1 or 2 screws that are missing and have been replaced with spares here, because there's 1 or 2 where I'm just like, that's not right for this, but I've got nothing else that will fit in there. So, fine, whatever. Right, let me grab my isopropyl and we'll clean up this cooling system. Right, so while I'm here, and I don't know how useful this will be, but let's do it anyway, I'll try and tell you what screws I'm putting where, just in case you've gotten a bit lost. This screw here is what I call the standard one. So these are all T5, Torx 5 screws, and this standard one is falling out of my calipers. It is a 3.5mm long, so that's going to be 3.5 plus 0.5 for the head, and 1.5mm wide. And this one is going into all of the main PCB screw holes. So we've got one in the I/O board over here, and then we go into there, and these other ones that are dotted about the board. And now I'm going to start connecting up stuff on the logic board itself. So we'll get the keyboard itself plugged in. And this guy does not have a lot of slack on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my tweezers under there just to curl it up and over so I can direct it into the connector. And making sure the connector is unlocked, just align that so the tension in the cable pushes it in. They are incredibly fiddly, these ones, so if you need to take a couple of swings at that, don't feel bad. There we go. Lock the connector, or what's left of it. Then we've got a power cable going over to the I/O board. I think that's power anyway. I'd imagine so. Speaker. And then we've got this bridge wire. Don't know what you call it. And the bridge wire at this end has a little cap on it to stop it falling out. And that cap has some more T5s, which are these little short boys. They've got the same width head on them as the standard screws, but they're shorter. They're only a couple mil long. And it's very important to use short screws in the correct places, because if you put long screws into these, you'll go all the way through the thread and start drilling a hole into the motherboard or the logic board. And that's called long screw damage. And if you long screw your board, you will have a bad day. Trackpad cable back in. So there should be another cover that goes over the top of this bit here to stop these guys from popping off, but it's missing from this laptop, so doesn't really matter. I've never seen them fall out. I don't really think that's a thing. I think these covers are overkill, but obviously if they're there, we'll use them. We've got the microphone array, I think, which is this guy plugging in down here. Microphone and light sensor, I think. Or just microphone. There we go. That's him in. And the other speaker goes on top of that. Okay, I'm going to get these speakers screwed in now. So the speakers have identical sets of screws. They have, each one of them has these three. So here we've got a standard screw, which goes at the far end of the speaker. Then we've got the long boy, which is this guy with the really tall thread. And that goes into there. And then we have the steppy boy, which has the big step on it. And that goes into there. And rinse and repeat on the other side. Now for my cooling fan, this is the ones where I think I've got some incorrect screws. I've got two standard screws, the same ones as I was using on the PCB, and I think those are correct for this one. One goes on the end and the other goes into here. And I'm going to be very careful because I would expect a shorter one to go into here. So I'm just going to feel that out though. No, that's fine. That's the correct length. And then finally, the only one I have left is this thin stepped screw. And that is going to go in here. But I'm not sure that one's correct because the head almost goes through that hole. So I'm not convinced that one is the correct screw. However, it does fit in, so I'll use it. And the fan is now not going to fall out. So, op success. And get that fan plugged in. So next I want to put on my my heatsink again. So we're going to grab some thermal paste. Still going on my Arctic MX4. Nearly run out of this stuff. Then I'll probably be switching over to MX5 because that exists now. And we're going to stick a spooge along there. Oh no! Oh, I've mashed it up, but that'll do. And on this laptop, I'm not going to put any on the PCH, which is the second die, because the heatsink itself does not cover that die. I talked about this in a recent video. The reason for that is that the CPU core is going to be looking for 90 degrees C. However, the PCH doesn't want to be at 90 degrees C. So the reason why they don't have the cold plate extend across there is you would essentially be transmitting all of that heat out of CPU core into the PCH, which might then overheat the PCH. The chances are the PCH is quite happy to run passive. My rule of thumb, as always, if the cold plate does not cover the PCH, I do not paste the PCH. That's my rule set. So these are all held down with more T5s. They've got the same screw head as the other ones, but again, these are short boys, and they need to be short boys, otherwise you'll long screw the standoffs. No, I've done this in the wrong order. And no, I don't need new thermal paste now. The existing stuff will be fine, although I may just quickly respread that. Right, before I put this on, I need to put in this screw here. And this screw here, this is a super weird one. It is a T8. And it's got that really narrow thread on it with the massive step. And it's got a tiny little hole down the center. And you'll see why that exists in a minute. Apologies for the focus on this. I can't be bothered to shift the camera focus for every screw. So this guy goes down here. And then this guy goes on top. And I'm just going to respread this thermal paste. I'm going to use my finger like a boss. And now the heatsink is held down by this other T5 screw, which has a really, really thin thread on it. So this guy is that's a 1.2 mil wide thread. So probably 1.2. That might be an M1 thread. I don't know. Whatever. 1.2 millimeters wide. And that goes through the top and into that weird tall screw. And this was actually set up incorrectly when this laptop came in, which is why this heat pipe is slightly bent out of shape. However, this will all just press down into place. Which has two standard screws holding it in place. And I'll just fit these in loosely and then just give this guy a little wiggle and make sure it's located nicely. There is a little notch there to make sure it's centered. So I'll make sure that's butted up in place and then tighten those screws down. There we go. And I think I need to put on my display assembly now, so I'm going to grab that. All right, I'll migrate to the edge of my desk again, because that way I can take this screen and hang it off the back of the counter. This changed my world, this technique. I always used to just try and like balance it upright on the table. This just works so well. Right, and now we need the big boy T8 screws. And I'm just going to put one in each side just to locate this in place. And then I can close the lid and have it all nice and flat on the counter again while I wire it up. And make sure the screen is aligned, and then just tighten those 2 screws so nothing can move about. And now pay mind to the way that the antenna cables here go through this little plate to hold them in place. So just make sure that all of this is not too jumbled up. So separate out the cables and make sure they're laid nicely. Otherwise, if you put these under tension, that's how you end up with broken antenna cables in the long run. Not too much of an issue on the Retinas I've found, but definitely a hazard in the pre-Retina MacBooks. Right, and that's our webcam plugged in. And now a little bit of tweezer work for these antennas. There we go. Right, that's sticking up a little bit, but that'll flatten when the back case goes on. Now, there should be a rubber bit that goes over here. That goes into both sides of the heat sinks and then lays across here. And the purpose of that is it provides an air seal around the fin stack, which prevents the cooling fan from sucking in hot air that's just blown across the fin stack, and thus it forces any air going through the fan to go out the back of the laptop because it has nowhere else to go. That rubber gasket is missing from this laptop, so I can't put it in there. It's not essential. It just means that this laptop might run a little bit louder than it has to. But again, this is just airflow optimization stuff. Most of the time, unless you're thrashing a laptop like this and using it for heavy encoding and stuff like that, the fan's rarely going to ramp up anyway. Or it shouldn't do anyway. Cool. Right, display connector in. Take care with this one. Don't ding the corners of it. And last item of business, which is easily forgotten, is these little guys here. So these are little covers. They go on either side of the hinge and they just cover that entrance point so there's no gap around there. So these go on, I'll hold them around that way. So notice the orientation of the hook. So it's going up and out. So the tall bit sticks up and the screw point goes out into the laptop. And they should only go in the correct way around, so just keep turning them until you figure out the correct orientation, and those will sit in there. And you should have 2 little dinky screws to go in there as well. Right, and I think I'm about done. So I'm looking on the workbench, not looking necessarily what's in the laptop. I'm looking at what I've got left, and I've run out of stuff. So by process of elimination, it must all be in the laptop. Everything has got a screw hole in it, with the exception of the battery. So plug that in, and this guy should be ready to go. Oh, speaking of, the battery itself. Yeah, I must have used the screw for that elsewhere. In fact, I did. I used the screw for the battery on there because that one was missing. That is not going to fall. I'll find a spare screw for that, actually. There we go. Right, this guy should start now. So let's just open it up and see if it goes. Power button. So the fan won't spin straight away on a 2015, but if I click the trackpad, I have feedback on the trackpad, so I know it's on. There we go. It lives again. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. QWERTY-OP. ASICL. And excellent. Op success. Thank you, autocorrect, for capitalizing those. Good, that works. So let's just close that up. And now I can put the lid on. Right, so that's us done with this one. So bit of a journey to get this laptop sorted, but a good result. It's got a much nicer keyboard in it. As soon as, like that old keyboard, I think it's a cheap, nasty keyboard, this one. I mean, this is only an eBay keyboard, but I've never had any trouble with eBay keyboards. But yeah, that one I think is a really nasty Chinese special one. And I have a suspicion that, yeah, the shop who was fitting it, possibly a bit green with disassembling these. They are a little bit intimidating when you're new to them, but as you can see, it's more than possible to navigate your way around them. So anyway, that's all I got for you today. So thank you very much for tuning in. If you like the video, hit the like button because that tells YouTube that you want to see more videos like this. Also, my support links are down in the description for my Patreon, my Discord, Twitter and Instagram, which I sometimes use, but you know the drill. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye.